You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
Vengeance. I am the knight. I am
Matt Laswitz, and welcome to this week's episode of Bat Chat with Matt and Will, a Batman ranking podcast, where each week my co-host Will Nevin and I dig into 3 Batman stories, discuss them, and rank them on the big board, thus creating a giant list of Batman stories from best to worst. Will, how's it going?
Oh man, it's bad. It's real bad. Everything's bad. It's terrible, awful, bad. So, next week we're taking the week off because it's my birthday. Now, that's not going to affect you all, aside from the fact we will get a little bit closer to being current. So, as you listen to this, it's like a month in the past. This is not the first time we're going to have to bring this up on this show, but the continuing fallout from Charlie Kirk's murder is astounding. I was just talking with a friend, and the entire idea that people are getting suspended and or fired and or punished simply for questioning the ongoing narrative regarding Kirk is so disturbing. The fact that Jimmy Kimmel can't suggest that right-wing political actors are using this to their advantage without losing his show for an indefinite period of time is very disturbing. There is a professor at Alabama, the state flagship, our next presumptive governor, the one Tommy Tuberville, says that he should be fired for suggesting that the murderer could be far right instead of far left. And the extent to which all of this is accelerating is disturbing, to say the least.
Yes, and I was really hoping that I wasn't going to have to think about it, right, for an hour and change.
I
Thanks.
know.
And I knew you were gonna. I knew it.
I know. Look, if not for the Kimmel thing, and look, we were going to have to talk about it anyway. A little bit.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit. But yeah, this fucking sucks, and I fucking hate it.
Well, yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a thing, and yeah.
The extent to which white people have not been okay through this whole thing also continues to astound me. To see Kirk mentioned unironically alongside figures like JFK and Martin Luther King blows my mind. So yeah, that fucking sucks, and it's terrible and awful. Another thing that fucking sucks. Look, I get why you would make Deadpool Batman print only. Like, I get it. Like, we'll make everybody rush to the comic shops. We'll make them all get back in the stores, and we'll all make them pick up books, and we'll all make them buy those fucking Funko Pops. But if you're going to do that, you got to advertise, right? Like, you got to make some popular press attention with this. I haven't seen anything mentioned in the popular press about this. Not a single fucking thing. So it astounds me that I can't go to Comixology, get this thing digitally. Pisses me the hell right off.
It makes very little sense without, as you said, there being a big push on it.
If there was a national advertising campaign, if Ryan Reynolds had done like social media promotion and be like, hey, I actually got, Marvel and DC to talk and make a comic book again, and I'm going to be in, a book with Batman, go to your local comic shop and get it. And maybe he is doing that kind of promotion. I certainly haven't seen any of it.
Well, one would also think you would have put banner ads for it on Disney Plus. But things like that would also probably then have to run through Warner because you're using Batman. But you'd think they'd want to unless they don't care. But why would you do this if either Warner or Disney didn't care?
Just doesn't make any sense. Not a lick of fucking sense.
No, it's very strange. I've got a copy. Lord knows I don't have the time to read anything, but anything but the stuff I have to read for my multiple podcasts.
And I presume it will eventually be available digitally, right? Like this has happened with the free comic book day books. You don't have them available digitally because you want people to go to the shops because it's a big promotional day. You know, it's the equivalent of Black Friday for your local comic shop. But this just, again, without the promotion, doesn't make any sense.
No, you got me.
That's taken care of. Bat Chat Movie Chat. What is the deal with adapting Stephen King and changing the ending?
I'm trying to think of the various times where it's been conspicuous that that's happened.
Cujo's one, right?
Cujo's one. The Shining is its own thing. The Shining basically took the core nugget of the story and crafts a fairly different narrative throughout, but the ending is very different.
The Mist? Question mark.
No, The Mist extrapolates from the ending, but the ending of The Mist is them driving into the mist, and he thinks that he has the gun with enough bullets for everyone, but they don't get to the point where he actually uses it.
Oh.
So it just sort of takes where it was going and is like, yeah, he did it, and then fuck you. The Mist remains the single most depressing ending to any movie ever made.
Oh, it has to be. It has to be.
The ending to Misery is slightly different, but again, it's within the thematic ending of the book. So, but yes, we're talking about The Long Walk here.
I had not read it. So I watched the movie and then I go read the Wikipedia entry about the book and I'm like, I think the ending to that book is more interesting.
The ending is very ambiguous.
Yes, I liked that.
Right, but if we know anything about Hollywood, it's that ambiguity is not their kettle of fish.
This was a very neat and tidy ending.
It is, but it's not as neat and tidy as it could be. I mean, we still get an ending where we get neither the Hunger Games ending of everyone standing with Pete or the and then they shot him.
Yeah.
Which both would have been very definitive endings. This is still an ending that leaves at least something in the mind of the audience because he is sort of walking off.
Mm-hmm.
It is considerably different than the very ambiguous, he just keeps walking, seeing a dark figure ahead of him ending of the book. I couldn't imagine going in they were going to do that ending.
Because that does seem to tie into, the greater King mythos.
Yeah, that I think more has to do with the language than the intention that we now know that King has these dark men, these men in black figures. I don't think that was what King intended at the time, but I think it's become a King trope over the decades since.
Cutting it down from 100 to 50, that was real smart, made it manageable.
I thought the performances were almost universally good to great.
Yo, yes. I wish Mark Hamill had been given a bit more, just in terms of like the Major is a pretty stock character.
Yeah,
Hamill looked like he was having a great time though. Good for him.
Yeah, getting to chew the scenery like he did, absolutely.
And there was a great subtext of the film ending, in this rainpour or downpour, and the Major's in his poncho, after these guys have been walking continuously for days and, he gets to sleep at night. I really wish we had drawn out a little bit more how much of a little shit he is. How all of these guys are really literally pushing themselves to death. And he's just an asshole. Just a weak asshole.
Hamill's not a tall man. There could have been some really good juxtaposition that these kids are taller than him. Or more shots with the father who was killed, who was a taller, more committed man, and a visual contrast between the two of them.
This is just one weak little man who has connived and schemed and slimed his way into power.
Like
But
so
yeah, it felt
many.
good seeing him get popped.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
so we've talked before about how this week definitely going to go see him, like 100%. But are you aware about the Dave Bautista movie that's out this week?
Yeah, this weird science fiction.
It is a post-apocalyptic heist movie. Dave Bautista's got to go steal the Mona Lisa.
I was not aware of any details. I was just aware that he had this weird movie coming out.
I mean, I am so sold. I think Sam Jackson appears to be in it for like all of 30 seconds as somebody who comes in and gives Dave his mission. A solar flare has basically cooked all of our electronics and all the governments fall and whatnot. But it's just Dave being Dave going to steal the Mona Lisa. All right, I'll go fucking watch that.
Weird movie.
And it seems like it would be one of those direct to Netflix
Oh,
movies that just somehow wound up going to theaters.
it absolutely struck me as a sci-fi channel movie with just a slightly better budget.
That's what theater is in 2025. The Knives Out movie goes to Netflix and this stuff goes to theaters. But you know what? I can't complain. It looks incredibly stupid and I'm so excited.
Reminds me of this movie last year, Werewolves, starring Frank Grillo as a scientist,
Oh, well, of course.
where I can't remember what it was, but some sort of planetary alignment or whatever makes most of the population into werewolves for one night. And then a year later, the same alignment is happening. So the whole world is going to turn into werewolves again. So scientists have been trying to find a way to cure werewolfism. And it's a thing.
Why wouldn't you just lock everybody inside for a night?
Well, that's what they try to do, but they know they're assholes who are going to want to go out and, be werewolves.
Freedom.
Well, yeah. And then there's the militia guy who's like, he's got all his guns and he's waiting for the werewolves to come to try to get into his house. And Grillo's sister-in-law and nephew, because his brother died in the first werewolf outbreak. Him having to find his way home to them. It was so dumb. And it was, again, it felt like a sci-fi channel movie, but it was on the big screen. Man, it was dumb.
Amazing.
You know who's not dumb?
Jim Gordon?
Yes, you got my segue right away. Because tonight we are reading 3 stories of the life and times of Jim Gordon. Our first story of the night is the graphic novel Batman Night Cries. This was written by Archie Goodwin, with art and colors by Scott Hampton, letters by Tracy Hampton Munsey, and edited by Denny O'Neil. The cover date is October of 1992. Batman and Jim Gordon face a new serial killer, one who is killing the abusers of children. Gordon faces his own past and the cycle of abuse, while he and Batman wrestle with handling the killer. We're going to start with something that is a little rare for what we do here. I actually want to give a full-on content warning. This segment is going to discuss child abuse. So if that is a topic that you are understandably sensitive to, you might want to skip forward about 15 minutes.
And this is abuse in all forms, all
Yes.
conceivable forms.
Yes. I don't know where to even, after that, where to start with this story.
Well, let's start with the fact that this is a painted book.
Yes, Scott Hampton, one of the Hamptons. There's at least a Legends of the Dark Knight 2 or 3-parter he did as well, and did a series of painted trading cards of Batman as well.
Not real great at your standard human form. I think some of the characters come off as a little grotesque, but in terms of mood and atmosphere, very stunning.
Yeah, top notch, atmospheric. You use the right word. Hampton absolutely captures the darkness of this book. This would
Eh,
not have been a story that would have worked with traditional superhero art.
No, no, because this is incredibly dark. Physical assault, sexual assault, the telling and descriptions of that assault. This is a heavy book.
It is. And there gets to be a little weirdness at the end with some meta-human-y stuff
Yeah, that
that
was a turn.
I'm not entirely sure why that was needed, why our killer seemed to have ESP when it came to abuse victims, especially when he's a shrink who's working with abuse victims.
He would have obviously known that anyway.
When it was first brought up, I'm like, oh, he's delusional. But then you seem to get evidence that he actually does have some sort of low level psychic power, which was an odd choice. It doesn't completely, like, it by no means completely ruins the book, but it was befuddling for a story that is, other than this, so grounded.
Yes, so incredibly grounded. And as you layer like the special forces on top of that, I think you lose what could have been a more effective story. If this had just been a story about not Leslie Tompkins, but a Leslie Tompkins type just going bad, just a basic fundamental story of I have seen too much shit in Gotham. I cannot take it anymore. I am going to start killing these motherfuckers. I think you could have had a stronger, certainly more straightforward story.
I think if you had either had the special forces or the psychic powers, as I like to say, I give any story one gimme.
Yeah.
But this one has the hat on the hat. That was just a little bit too much.
Yeah. Definitely in agreement there. And to further on the too much, right? So we have the three people who are basically presented as would-be suspects with the youth home. Not only do we have our ultimate suspect, but we have his sister, and then we have their physical trainer. And so that also gets a little convoluted in the story.
You had to have the red herring because otherwise it would have been obvious if it was just the one. You know it's a man because you see him.
Hmm.
Also, in all fairness, you saw him and you saw he was a white guy, and the physical therapist is a black man, so you know which one it is. But still, all three stories tonight deal with, in some respect or another, Jim Gordon struggling with his relationship with Barbara, not Babs. We'll be very careful tonight when talking about Jim's daughter. She will be Babs, and Jim's first wife will be Barbara to allow for disambiguation. And this is the first story to ever reference the fact that Jim's father was physically abusive. That has not usually been referenced elsewhere. It's referenced briefly in the next story, just one line. But still, this is the only story I can ever remember that actively talks about Jim's father being abusive and Jim dealing with the cycle of abuse.
And Jim understanding that he has to break this, that he has to get out and find help.
I don't want to use an old phrase, Wednesday morning quarterback, a great story, but boy, it would have been something to reference in Black Mirror or Joker when dealing with James Jr. Here we do see Jim having that one moment where he does snap and stopping himself before he actually does hit his son, and that being the thing that makes him realize he needs to break the cycle. And here we see a different version of Barbara leaving than in any other version of that. We'll see another one tonight. We know the one from Long Halloween, where Jim is an active participant in Barbara leaving versus her just leaving him. Where Jim makes the choice that he can't be with them until he deals with his shit.
Which is very different than what we see later.
Yes. And it's a painful, but I don't know if honorable, at least honest choice. Yeah, he knows where he is at this moment. I don't know what the right answer for that would be. I don't have kids. There's always the phrase that, it's better to have two parents than not. But maybe in this case, he made the right choice. I'm not one to speak on that.
We certainly see a lot of sides of Jim Gordon tonight. The honest cop, the cop willing to break the rules, the good family man, the bad family man, the good dad, the bad dad. It's a pretty well-rounded character.
When you think about it, he is literally as old as Batman. He is a character who made his first appearance in the same comic that Batman did. So you either create a character who is very much a stock figure or a character who has to become well rounded. And they made the choice to really grow Jim Gordon as a character over the years, especially since year one. But just thinking about it, there is almost more time from year one to now than there was from Detective 27 to year one.
Oh
We're
boy,
only a couple years off there being more time since year one.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's literally crazy.
We also do get little bits of another common theme in all three stories tonight about corruption. That the thing that draws Jim to this case isn't the first killing, despite him being there and witnessing it, or not witnessing the crime, but being at the crime scene. But the second crime, because that guy was rich. And the first victim was a poor black family versus a rich white family. And it's when the rich white family, who the victim happened to be one of the people who gave the mayor's campaign a lot of money, then it gets attention. And when Gordon, using information from Batman, says this guy was involved in drug trafficking, the mayor's, I don't know what he was, it's never quite made clear, but he's somebody who works at the mayor's staff liaising with the GCPD. It's like, no, that doesn't make sense. Find me a better motive and killer, because it's not just about drugs. And of course, it wasn't about drugs, but Batman seems to believe it's about drugs. And he goes through most of this book so confident that this is about drugs. And it's Jim who puts things together, and Jim who comes to Batman with, "You're not right."
There are some interesting threads and ideas that are dropped in here and forgotten pretty quickly. Does take a bit for the drug angle to work its way through, but the idea that Batman is behind this comes up and then goes out pretty quickly.
And only comes back at the very end, the final pages, where Bruce is haunted by this, by the cruelty, by the fact that he would have never been able to solve this and is not going to be able to deal with these crimes because they're so often unreported. And him raging at the sky on a beautiful 2-page spread at the end of the book. This book was magazine sized. This was not standard OGN sized, by the way. This was oversized when it came out.
I feel like that last little bit, especially where they're talking about numbers, got right up to the line of like very special episode, but probably didn't cross it.
Yeah. I don't know who quotes statistics right before they take their own life, but I saw what they were trying to do. And as you said, it was close, but it wasn't quite over the line. That idea that this killer is somewhat inspired by Batman, or how Bruce relates to this killer, is brought up and dropped pretty quickly. And that could have used a little more time to percolate and to be discussed. Some of this stuff is just brutal.
Yeah.
There
Like
are a couple of
we,
moments that I was clenching the table because it was ugly. And I don't mean that necessarily as a bad thing, because these things need to be ugly because they are.
in a lot of ways, this is probably the most serious story we've read in a long time.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Aside from the interviews with the abused children, especially the little boy,
Oh
which
my
was
God.
painful.
Christ.
There's a moment where Jim is remembering the abuse and his father hitting him with a belt. And the art is very careful that he's being hit with the buckle. It's not bent over and spanked with the leather. He's being hit with a metal belt buckle. It's hideous. It's fascinating. I mean, we've read Archie Goodwin stories before, and this is considerably later in his career than either Manhunter or Death Mask. He didn't lose it.
No?
It's a powerful story that has some flaws to it.
And basically all of the content warnings we can put on it.
Yeah. I will also say it has one of the most dragnet lines.
Oh my God, I loved that. I love that. You know, you sort of primed me for it, but when I got to it, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what Matt was talking about.
Why is it, Commissioner? What, Sergeant? On the really bad ones, the medical examiner is always late. Bum, 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 bum. You could see that as a scene break at the end of a Dragnet. That back and forth is bam.
And then there's also a great one in, I suppose, what might be the next story.
Yep, that one too. Both of them have major Dragnet energy in a couple of moments. The other one, the second one, is generally a little more Dragnetty, but this one, that one line was like, oh wow. It's some uniform talking to Friday at the end of a scene in a Dragnet.
You contribute nothing to society. You just sit there.
Yep.
Is it time?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that means it's time. But night cries on the big board.
We are at 621 stories on the big board.
God damn.
Number one is Post-Crisis Origin of Batman, Batman Year One.
And a new Sexy 69. We've got Catwoman, Selena's big score.
That is indeed a sexy story.
It is very sexy.
At 200 is the crossover event Contagion. At 400 is Ecstasy, the first appearance of one Joe Potato.
Oh, may he rest in peace. Coming in real high, not nearly as close to the bottom as it once was at 420. It's Legends of the Dark Knight number 51, Snitch.
And all the way at the bottom at 621, it's Three Jokers.
A goddamn dog turd of a story, Matt. Does it crack 250?
I think it does. I think we're in the top 200. It's above Contagion. But I mean, it doesn't crack the top 100, I think, because of some of those weird quirks to the story.
I think everything is going to be relatively high tonight. These were some solid stories.
Yes, I agree.
And this probably the lowest? Question mark? We'll get there.
It's not number one. It's
No.
either two or three. I just am having thinking about it, I'm not sure. All right.
So this has the ambition of Holy Terror at 188, but it's far more grounded and far more central, obviously, to the Bat mythos. It seems like Doomsday Book at 169 might be a good hard ceiling.
Yes.
Player on the Other Side at 170. Similar good hard ceiling.
Yeah. I think we're near there, though. Speaking of ambitious, but with some elements that don't work, 176 Terminus, the Delano Bachelot Legends of the Dark Knight, with all the people in the Hotel of Lost Souls in Gotham. Again, it's a supernatural, but also grounded in that it's crime stories, but the hotel itself is a sort of haunted place. I think this probably works better. So I think we're in between 170 and 176. That's a real tight range.
How about the new 175? Right under You Should Have Seen Him.
Yeah, I think that's good. And right above Cutter, the final Rucka Batwoman arc. Sounds good. Our second story of the night is Gordon of Gotham. This is a 4-issue miniseries. The writer is Denny O'Neil, pencils by Dick Giordano, inks by Klaus Janson, Colors by Pamela Rambeau, letters by Clem Robbins, and edited by Scott Peterson and Darren Vincenzo. The cover date is June to September of 1998. Jim Gordon recounts to Batman the story of his last case in Chicago, a case of dirty cops, corrupt politician, and a shadowy secret agent. It's a case that has haunted Jim for years, and one that is coming back to haunt him now in Gotham, giving him one last chance to redeem himself. So, another content warning here. This is a story that ends up dealing with a political assassination by sniper rifle, or attempted in this case. If this episode were dropping the week we're recording, or even possibly the next week, I probably would have swapped this out for Gordon's Law, but we're going to be a month down the line.
I'm glad we still have that one on the shelf. Gordon of Gotham comes in a trade with Gordon's Law, and what else was in there?
GCPD, which is the other cops. It's a set in the modern time. It's like a Bullock story, a Montoya story, a Kitch and Kaz story. I think Bach and Sarah. Like it's all the other cops. Very much proto Gotham Central. But Dixon,
looking forward to reading both of those.
Yeah, and there's a one-shot called Bullock's Law. I think I have all three of those as one other episode down the line.
Nice. But yeah, if it says Gordon of Gotham on the 10, this is more like Gordon of Chicago.
I wasn't sure why they titled it that, other than it's a title that works better than Gordon of Chicago. Right out of the gate, the timeline here feels weird. Because this story feels like it's set in the late 60s, early 70s, but it's right before year one. So even if year one was taking place when it came out, that would have meant 1986. We're dealing with hippies. They're flat out hippies. And Jim Gordon giving one of them a Jack Webb speech.
Oh my God, it was so good.
If you really think about me that way, why'd you save me? Because it's my job. There's a lot of stuff in here that a scene between Jim and Barbara where they're arguing about having kids and him giving this very, macho, like, how do you think it feels when we can't have children? What it means to me as a man. If this were Chuck Dixon, those scenes would feel very different to me than it is what this is written by Denny O'Neil, who was like a hippie.
And this does include the line, I'm a damn good cop.
Yep, this is the one. You're a damn good cop, Jim Gordon.
Oh my God, I laughed and laughed and laughed.
If you've never watched Harley Quinn, you will read that. You will watch that show, and that line will be the funniest thing. This story is also very grounded in some respects, but also wild in others.
Yeah, like it's not a stretch to believe that cops would be rigging an election in Chicago and that cops would be crooked in Chicago. But to me, the most unbelievable scene was, Gordon getting called into, the captain's office and saying, all right, Jim, you're getting a reputation as kind of a dirty cop around here. You should transfer to Gotham.
I think that guy was IA. I don't think he was the captain. But still, regardless, because the captain was real crooked.
Yeah, that's a little weird. I feel like you don't get a different job out of a cloud of suspicion. And then also, I don't think these crooked cops would tell you had to go find another job.
And that's one of the things that's there to explain something. Because there are lines in year one when Flass first meets Gordon about him leaving Chicago under a cloud of suspicion. And for everything we know about Jim Gordon, we know that doesn't make any sense. So here, him being under the cloud of suspicion because he had to break a bunch of rules to take down dirty cops is a very Jim Gordon sort of story.
And it does set him up as a guy who cares about rules, cares about the law, but then also cares about results. Like he is a guy who would work with Batman against a corrupt system.
Yeah, that Gordon understands that there are times where you can't just follow the rules. There are a lot of bits in this story, though, that feel like, this story, reading this in 2025, man, this obnoxious, loudmouthed, bloviating, populist candidate. And everyone joking, boy, it could be, just running for city council. It could be worse. He could be running for president. There's very Dead
Uh,
Zone vibes
oh
to
yeah.
it, in the same way that when you read the Dead Zone now, it's like, oh God.
Yeah, real conniving dirtbag.
But a character that we don't really ever get to know. He's just there in a couple of wacky little, like, here he is making a speech and everybody's making jokes about him. When most of the stuff we see is Davidson, the crooked cop that Jim runs across initially, and the captain, who is both Jim and Davidson's captain, Ford, who is the politician's man on the inside of the Chicago PD. They get more fleshed out than Green, the politician, who we just know is out there. And he gets one scene, really, where you see him just swaggering onto stage. And it works in Chicago, too, but you almost kind of expect him to sound this kind of like Huey Long sort of drawl. Good old Southern politician sort of vibe, which is not Chicago, but the accent isn't Chicago, but the vibe is very Chicago.
I loved our little Irish assassin. He was
Cohulan,
delightful.
Cohulan, name for the great hunter.
I too was able to read his lines in a brogue.
Oh,
It was perfect.
another line in there when Jim Gordon first sees him. Gordon says the only way to describe him was beautiful. It's like, yeah, Denny O'Neil would say that. Chuck Dixon would never say that.
Redheads, fucking sexy. They can get it. I loved. I don't think the dialogue was spaced out just right, but the page where we keep zooming into his face and his eyes as he's talking to Gordon, like, look, even on your best day, even when you had two working arms, you couldn't touch me. You couldn't beat me, and that's why you're not going to try. That was brutal. All of the stories tonight, in one way or another, are about Jim Gordon getting his ass kicked. That kind of is the character's most endearing quality about how even more than Batman, he can get his ass kicked, he can get his heart broken, he can have everything ripped away from him, but he still comes back for more.
There's a reason why he's still commissioner of Gotham City, why he was the longest sitting commissioner in Gotham history. I say that, I assume, because he would have been commissioner for like over a decade. I don't think most people stay commissioner of police for that long, any in major cities, in reality.
Well, in Gotham, either you're assassinated, or you're fired, or you're arrested.
Or you collect enough bribe money that you retire to Santa Prisca, which there's a reference to Santa Prisca here. That, oh,
Yep.
we're laundering our money through Santa Prisca.
Because why not?
I love the parallels with Jim's relationship with Batman and Jim's relationship with Hulin. This is the first guy who Jim ever worked with who worked outside the law, except he was dirty. That he doesn't have Bruce's nobility. Green, the politician, offered him more money to swap from working for the US government investigating the corruption to working for him and making sure he got elected. And Cahulan just took the money.
Why the government would need Cahulan was not conclusively argued.
No. If Green was an established part of the political machine or something like that, I could kind of see where you would go with it. But he seemed to be running for the first time. So there isn't any real reason why that would have been required here. Why you couldn't just have the FBI investigate him.
Because you needed a sexy Irish assassin in the story.
Again, you get a gimme, and that was the gimme on this one. Say, okay, the government needed this guy to do the investigating. All right, you needed a hot Irishman. Got it. Yeah.
He's smooth. He's talented. He ages well.
Yeah. Not only did he not lose his hair over the course of all those years when Jim goes completely gray, he's now got like long, wavy locks versus, his short hair and the flashback. Because this whole story is narrated from the present of Jim telling this story to Batman. And it turning out that the reason why is that Cahulan has been spotted in Gotham. And Green, who is now running for president, has a campaign stop here. And Jim knows there has to be a connection. I'm not overly in love with Batman being like, no, I can't help you. You need to do this yourself. I feel like Batman saying that would be okay, but also adding, but I'll be there if you need me, versus just sending Jim out into the wild.
Yeah, you kind of want Gordon to say that. This is my thing. I have to finish this.
But I might need backup, and I trust you to be the guy who, if I fall, I know you could take Cahulan. I am surprised with the era. There was next to no or very minimal references to him having worked with the IRA. The Irish thing makes you think this guy would have totally been in with the IRA back in the day.
Well, depending on how much the crown is paying.
Very true.
Pound sterling, it trades pretty well.
And we talked about it again a little in the last story, and we mentioned it a bit when we were talking about Jim having this very stereotypical macho line about we can't have kids and how that reflects on me as a man. But here, Jim and Barbara are not in a good place. And we see, I think, from this and from all of these stories, Jim and Barbara's marriage was very troubled for a long time. It's not like coming to Gotham is the thing that made their marriage fall apart. They were not working well together even before then. Not just the hippie stuff, but the look of the city, the look of the characters here was all very much set in a bygone era. Not just 10 years before this story would have come out, but well before that.
Oh, and just wait until we get to the final story. It gets even more dated and more crazy.
And we'll discuss why that is when we talk about those artists. I mean, Dick Giordano, again, he draws a good comic. I mean, these characters all look really good. The action is solid. We've read plenty of stories drawn by Giordano before. And Klaus Janson, you don't get a much better inker than Klaus Janson.
No.
But Barbara dresses like a 50s housewife in a story that feels like it's set in the 60s, but has to take place in the 80s for the timeline to work. And this isn't like the timelessness of Batman the Animated Series. This is just a sort of weird mishmash of looks and things.
Speaking of timelessness, good job in Long Walk making it feel relatively timeless.
Yes. Oh, I thought the look of the movie was really good too. I really liked just the vibe of that film.
And I was not surprised to learn that it was originally set in Maine because all Stephen King works are set in Maine.
Or Colorado.
Very true.
There's a few Colorados in recent. This is a tangent, but in recent years, there's a few in Florida as well, as King has started wintering in Florida. Duma Key and Lisi's Story are down in Florida.
But this is some kind of nebulous stretch of Louisiana in the film.
In the end, Gordon wins in this story. He does defeat Cahulan, which 10 years on does seem a little much of a stretch, because if Gordon didn't think he could take Cahulan back then, I don't know how he thought he could take him now, but he does. But then again, we've seen Jim. I mean, there's that great scene from year one of him beating the shit out of Flass, giving Flass the baseball bat. One of the best scenes in year one. And in the end, Gordon feels like he's gotten his redemption for letting Cahulan get away, for letting all of the people die, and him not stopping him back then. Other cop stories, there would be some kind of internal justification for that. But Gordon never justifies it. He never writes it off. He admits he did wrong there. And that's the other thing you have to always respect about as a character. Jim Gordon knows when he doesn't do the right thing, and it always haunts him, and he attempts to do right. These are fictional stories, and we all, I think, everyone has feelings about law enforcement, but Gordon is a fictional character, and Gordon is the idealized version of the last good cop, but a very flawed man.
Yes.
As we see, I mean, with Sarah Essen in the recent arc, the final Zdarsky arc, with him having an affair with Mayor Nakano's wife, he has feet of clay, but he always tries to rise up and tries to be better. And that's a central theme of the Batman mythos. Why do we fall?
Pick ourselves back up.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, that means it's time. But Gordon of Gotham on the big board. I think this is better than Night Cries.
I think the difference between story 3 and story 1 today is not going to be more than 40 or 50 places. They're all going to be in the same like area of the board.
Yeah. And certainly we'll get there when we get there. But the next story has got some peaks and some valleys. I think the peaks are very, very, very good.
Yes. And the valley, while not great, is not such a deep valley that it plummets. Because I think this is more two real high peaks, two good little mountains, and then sort of a hill.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever really a valley. So right now, just as a point, story 100 is another Gordon the Cop story. It's loyalties about Babs having witnessed a crime and Jim protecting her as a witness. I don't think this beats that, but I'm just saying it's funny that right now story 100 is also one of our "you're a damn good cop" Jim Gordon stories.
Look, I could read Jim Gordon, You're a Damn Good Cop for the rest of ever. This was a good night. I enjoyed it.
So 150 is the secret origin of Scarface, the Wagner, Grant, Christensen story from Showcase that finally reveals the origin of the ventriloquist in Scarface.
I think it's probably higher than that.
I don't know by how much, though. All right, then 145 is Duty. Gordon and Bullock versus the Joker while Batman's out of town. And above that is Puzzle Box. It's not above Puzzle Box.
How about new 148 right above All-Star Batman?
Yeah, sounds good. New 148. We really are suckers for a Jim Gordon story. We've got a lot of Jim Gordon stories in the top.
Fucking love a Jim Gordon story, man.
We both love crime stories, and your best Jim Gordon stories are crime stories. And our final story of the night is Turning Points. This is Batman Turning Points 1 to 5. The writers are Greg Rucka, Ed Brubaker, and Chuck Dixon, with art by Steve Lieber, Joe Giella, Dick Giordano and Bob Smith, Brent Anderson, and Paul Pope and Claude St. Aubin. The colors are by Tom McGraw, Shannon Blanchard, Glenn Whitmore, John Callis, and Patricia Mulvihill. Letters are by Willie Schubert, and it's edited by Matt Idelson and Michael Wright. The cover date is January of 2001. Follow the friendship of Batman and Jim Gordon from their time together when they were both new to Gotham to the end of Gordon's career at the GCPD. Problematic Creator Watch, as ever, Chuck Dixon remains a right-wing crank. So, this was released weekly right before Officer Down. This was there to sort of set the scene for Gordon about to retire after being shot.
Interesting. Very ambitious career retrospective, trying to fit decades of history into one series and make it all kind of work and make sense. I think for the most part it does work. For me, I think that soft little hill is the Azrael chapter.
Yes.
It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And we don't see Azrael being Azrael. And Gordon, we haven't done a lot of Nightfall. Gordon has got to have the good goddamn sense to know that that's not the Batman.
He realizes it by the end. And he especially realizes, because we also haven't done Prodigal, the story where briefly after nightfall, after Bruce reclaims the mantle, he gives it to Dick for a little bit while he goes and does other stuff. There, Gordon at one point flat out says to Dick, I know you're not him. I'll turn around so you can do the disappearing act, because Gordon is pissed that Batman left again and didn't tell him. The bookends of this. I like the Brubaker chapters at 2 and 3, but the 1 and 5, the Rucka chapters, are the best.
Oh my God, are they ever? Just Batman trying to be a friend and Gordon just being angry and lonely and rebuffing him and then coming all the way back to that in the end. Oh, my heart, my
There,
heart.
there are two one-offs that we will obviously eventually cover. One is Legend of the Dark Knight 125, which is Bruce and Jim finally making peace towards the end of No Man's Land, and Jim Gordon's retirement dinner in Detective Comics in the aftermath of Officer Down. They're both Rucka one-shots, and with the exception of Tynian's Joker, I don't think anyone has ever written a better Jim Gordon than Greg Rucka. He just gets the character. And oh, it's so good. I love the way those two chapters play off each other. The character who's introduced in part 1 coming back in part 5 and it completing the circle. And all 4 of the earlier chapters show Jim losing.
Mm-hmm.
He loses his wife in the first one. He loses his aide, he's not his partner because he's commissioner, but this sort of major domo is killed by Mr. Freeze in part 2. Part 3 is about Barbara and Killing Joke. And part 4 is Nightfall and Batman having left him high and dry. You get to the end and he gets a win. He and Batman both get a win.
I loved that as just being the answer to the question, is this worth it? Is going through all of this shit worth it? You know, losing Jason, having Barbara get shot, losing your wives. Is it worth it? And then the answer is it can be. It really can be because you are making a difference. And I think both for Jim and Bruce, that is nice to ultimately occasionally remind them that they do get some wins. And yeah, I loved how this all tied up in the end. But the Azrael stuff aside, the Babs chapter was really good.
Yes. Babs calling Bruce out on his innate selfishness.
You prick. You fucking prick. You don't think dad is hurting out there? You don't think my dad is having a hard time with all this shit? He's your friend. Go fucking talk to him, you piece of shit.
Oh, and I tell you, it makes you want to have seen the resolution of the case that they're investigating there. It's a MacGuffin. I mean,
Oh yeah.
we don't need to know who is chopping up bodies and leaving them in dumpsters around Gotham. It doesn't matter. But it's still enough that I'm like, ooh, I kind of wonder what happened to the garbage man. And I do like the post death in the family Bruce is haunted by the idea that he creates the monsters. I don't think Bruce often thinks that way, but I think after Jason's death, he definitely could be haunted by the we create the monsters thing.
At his
right time.
lowest points.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, that ending there where they finally talk and Bruce, I'm sorry for what happened to your daughter. I'm sorry what happened to your son. He wasn't my son. Not
The
really.
hell he wasn't.
Yeah. Chapter 2. If we were to rank these individually, not on the big board, but just in general, it feels like chapters 1 and 5, on a scale of 1 to 5, are both 5s.
Mm-hmm.
The Babs chapter is like a 4, 4.5. The Azrael one is like a 2.5. And the second chapter is like a 3.
It tries to tackle the impossible. Why are you putting a child in harm's way? In a modern story, you just can't do it. That's why Damien is a trained assassin. You can't do Dick Grayson, the happy-go-lucky, acrobat in the line of fire on a nightly basis. But I admire this story for trying. And I think Bruce has a good argument as you can. Like, I'm not putting this child at risk. I am saving him. He is hurt. He is broken. If not for me, he would try to do this on his own and he would get himself killed.
I'm pretty sure I've referenced this before, but there's an episode of Young Justice where the League is gathered and they're talking about the team of sidekicks. And some of them feel more strongly than others about them needing to shut this down or rein this in. And Bruce is often is there defending it. And Wonder Woman, angry, oh, of course, coming from you who made Robin into a child soldier at the tender age of 8. Trying to make him like yourself. No, I did it so he wouldn't turn out like me. That is how you have to view Batman and Robin in a modern context. Bruce isn't doing this to make an army or to make an heir. He's doing this because he didn't get the closure. He didn't have anyone to support him in that way. And so he became this. So he's trying to give Dick and Jason the chance to make that peace that he couldn't. Tim's a whole other thing. And it's one of the reasons why I think Tim needs to be older, especially when he becomes Robin. That he needs to be 15 or 16, not 12 like Dick was. I think one of the things you have to do in a modern context also is Dick can't be 8.
No.
Even now, you probably need to make him older than 12, but 12 is sort of the safe, established number what Dick was when he became Robin. But both Jason and Tim have to be older, just, again, for modern sensibilities. All the art here is very different and usually fits the story they're telling pretty well. Story 2 jumps out. It has the lightest art by far. But that's Joe Giella, who was a creator of the late golden through the silver age, mostly an inker. So this was hey, we're doing this story of Robin. Let's get an artist who has that silver agey sort of vibe to his work.
And they let him do it.
Oh, yeah. The fact that the final confrontation takes place in one of the warehouses storing giant Gotham props was an obvious choice that I would assume that Brubaker knew he was getting Giella, or that DC read that and was like, okay, we're going to get somebody who would have drawn or inked some of the crazy prop stories back in the day.
But that was wild seeing that Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, seeing original costume Mr. Freeze and his
lime green.
Oh, it's so ugly. It's not my least favorite Mr. Freeze. That is still reserved for New 52 Mr. Freeze. But
I counter with head in a jar, Mr. Freeze.
He at least is fully covered. I still do not understand how a guy who can't be exposed to the elements is wearing a tank top.
Well, that's how you get head in a jar, Mr. Freeze.
Join us in December for the episode of the bonus Bat Chat, where we are going to be watching all of the Batman the Animated Series Mr. Freeze and see if Will's reaction to head in a jar Mr. Freeze changes when he gets the context.
It won't.
Steve Lieber, who drew the first chapter, is probably my favorite artist of the bunch. I love Lieber's work, both the stuff he's done with Matt Fraction and Nick Spencer, but also the work he did with Rucka on Whiteout. He works really well with Rucka. I like Paul Pope in Chapter 5. Pope, whose stuff can be pretty wild and out there, is pretty restrained in that story. It's closer to house style while still being Paul Popey. I love that that's the first time that Chris Allen sees Batman. It's so fun to see a character get that first reaction to seeing Batman. In the first appearance of Akins, who will be the commissioner during Gotham Central.
The final chapter here is not just the sort of the closing bit, the tie back to the first chapter. It also felt much of like they called it a year now. This is this is all your Gotham Central people. This is what the current status quo is. this is what we're doing right now.
It's Gotham Central Zero.
Yeah.
Circling back to the Babs issue, because I do have this highlighted in my notes. This does a good job of focusing on the less exploitative bits of Killing Joke and on the scene that I often feel like should be focused on more and gets sort of glossed over. Gordon insisting that Batman bring Joker in right. That they
By the
need,
book.
by the book, they need to prove that Joker was wrong. And tangenting ish for a minute, that is one of the other things that about Hush 2 that pisses me off so much. Gordon himself back then was like, you can't just kill the Joker. Jim is the one who talks Batman out of killing the Joker in Hush. Why is Barbara all of a sudden like, no, my dad was wrong. You have to kill him?
Because that's the story that Jeff Loeb wanted to tell.
Because Babs is carrying the idiot ball in this story. And I hate it.
We still got 8 more issues to read of that. Maybe.
Yeah. I also love in that issue that while Jason hangs over that story, no one says Jason's name until page 16 of 22. It's Barbara who finally says his name.
If you had to swap out one of the chapters for a different turning point, and let's assume that we're not going to now, cut it off as they did. If you had to swap out one of the turning points, what would it be and why?
You know how I said there are these 2 other Greg Rucka one-offs? I would literally not do the Dixon issue and just reprint Legends of the Dark Knight 125. But that is only a year or so before the final story, so it's a little too close. But that is Bruce and Jim having it out after years of Jim feeling like Batman is letting him down and then coming back and letting him down and coming back. That is them hashing it out. And I don't want to tell you how that story ends.
Well, then don't tell me.
But it is a phenomenal moment. It is the moment that really shows how much they trust each other, or how much Jim trusts Batman in the end.
If we include the last 20 years, Super Heavy get in there?
I think a post Super Heavy Bruce is back in the costume and he and Jim maybe even have one adventure together. Jim not in the armor, but in a Batman costume. And the two of them, Jim being like, this is my last night where I get to do this. I don't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to do it to begin with. But if I'm going to have done this, I want to have one night where we go out together, both of us as Batman.
Yeah, that'd be a fun story.
I think that'd be a really fun story. As much as Super Heavy frustrates me, if you're gonna have Jim in the costume, I think a team up of the two of them. It's the same thing with, Batman Beyond, that one episode that we watched, the one where Bruce is de-aged and you get the triumphal, the rise of the Batman the Animated Series score as Bruce and Terry fight back to back. Not a big adventure, like not a Gotham shaking adventure, but
just a little drug ring. Just a little drug ring.
Scarecrow. Take on a rogue. It's not Joker, because a Joker fight with Batman and Jim Gordon would be too pretentious. It would be too, ooh. And not Harvey either. Again, too much history there. But Scarecrow or some scheme of the Penguins, something like that.
Interesting that you mentioned Two-Face. This story absolutely did not steer into any long Halloween, Harvey Dent, triumvirate stuff. This is definitely a Batman, Jim Gordon duo. Ain't nobody else involved.
There's one line in the first one when Jim's thinking about buying a house, like Harvey and Gilda. And
That's it.
The only mention of Dent. And you get a little bit of Bullock in the Babs chapter.
You get an old ass Bullock in the Babs chapter.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out. Bullock has no hair. And then a little more Bullock in the Azrael chapter. But the thing there is that they don't ever actually meet. You couldn't have danced between the raindrops. There is the scene where Gordon tells Azrael to get lost, that you're an outlaw now. That happens towards the end of Night Quest. So you couldn't do that story. So you had to dance between the raindrops. It's when you're doing a story that is set in such a specific period of time. All of that is so laid out that you could work these other stories in sort of gaps. But there aren't a lot of gaps in the Nightfall, Night Quest, Night's End period.
And this one in particular required Jim to be kind of dumb.
We've talked so much about Jim Gordon over the years on this show, and we can say that. We've been doing this for years.
Years.
Gordon knows. He knows who's under that cowl. He just needs to retain deniability. The only reason why I don't know if Jean-Paul has actually had a conversation or been face to face with Jim by that point. That's the only way you get a pass on that. Because Jim has seen Bruce go dark. He's been there for that post Jason Todd's death period where Bruce was more brutal. But I think the minute they have a conversation, he knows that that's not the person he's been talking to for about a decade.
Yeah. Oh, that guy's taller or shorter, and he has a different voice. Huh.
I liked chapter 1. They used the year 1 lettering, the boxes, the different schemes of it. It was a nice touch. But all in all, this is a really good series.
Yes. Good in concept, good in execution. If you're going to hand somebody a mini series starting into Batman fresh, this is not a bad one.
It's especially if you need to introduce them to Gordon as a character. Joker and Year 1 are probably the best Gordon stories, but this one is much lower maintenance than either of them. This is very introductory and gives you a wider swath of who Gordon is.
Yes.
Than Year 1, which is very specific to that moment in time.
Oh, I think that means it's time. But turning points on the big board.
Story of the night.
Yes.
I don't think it breaks the top 100, again, just because there is that soft bit in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I would happily put it above one of my personal babies, though, My Beginning and My Probable End at 125.
Okay, if it's above 125, what do you think about Hush at 118?
I'm torn on that.
Oh.
Hush, I mean, again, historical significance, Hush has that in its favor. But I think this is a better story.
It is a better story.
I don't think we're going much higher, though. I don't know if it goes above 113 on Wings, Dick and Babs's first date. Although, you know what? I think we might, because, again, I think when we talked about that story, as it was pointed out, that story would have worked better and probably would have wound up higher if it, being an issue of Birds of Prey, was narrated by Barbara and not by Dick. But it's not better than Oracle Year 1.
Do 110 then.
Yeah. It's funny, if we could break out the first and the third chapter and then combine Oracle Year 1 with the Brubaker chapter, because they're taking place right around the same time.
There's just something about Babs giving Bruce the business.
Especially when he deserves it. And that does it for tonight. We're going to be taking advantage of that week of not recording to do one of our more ambitious episodes, reading the entirety of Batman and Robin Eternal, as well as a couple stories featuring Cassandra Cain.
It's only like 5 issues, right?
Just believe that, buddy.
Oh, okay. All right. Sounds good.
Remember, you can support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/batchat with Matt and Will, where you can get shout outs, bonus content, pick a story, and even come on the show. We'd like to thank those Patreon backers: Dan Grote, Josh Wheel, Mrs. Abigail Hartbaum, Asimov Fangirl, Tony Thornley,
Go Aggies.
Sam Hopper, John Wickham,
That fucking asshole.
Robert Secundus,
Let down the discourse, Bobby.
Tim Rooney, Giorgio Sergioli, David Wheel,
World's greatest gray belt.
Alexander Wheel, Matt McThorne,
McThorny,
Dan Offer,
barely knew her.
Nate Randall, Daniel Mosley, Ross Holmes,
Mr. Random Ace.
Will Crisp,
Me compadre.
Carlos Cordova, Jordan Jennings, and Charlie Etheridge Nunn for their support. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music/Audible, YouTube Music, Podbean, and on comicsxf.com, where new episodes drop every Thursday. You can find me on Blue Sky, where I talk about comics and other random things, and Letterboxd, where I review all the movies I watch, both at MattLaz1013.
I am well and truly looking forward to Afterburn. I think that's going to be a hilariously good time. But you can still find me against my better judgment on Twitter at Will Nevin. And Sam, it's time to go to bed. Good night, Huntsville.
And be sure to visit ComicsXF at comicsxf.com or ComicsXF on Blue Sky for our weekly Friday Batchat roundup of new Bat books. For my other show, the ComicsXF Interview Podcast, where my longtime best friend Dan Grote and I interview comics creators, retailers, publishers, journalists, and other related tradespeople, as well as all the other stuff Will and I are writing. And stay safe out there, folks. Gotham is not a place to be after dark.